Okay, students. Good morning to all of you. So, today, this is the continuation of the Prince and the Pauper. So, for the last class, we have seen chapter 1 and 2. Today, I am going to go ahead with 3 and 4. Right. In the 3 and 4, and see the Tom was wandering in the streets. Since he is hungry, he doesn't know where to go, and he wanders along the streets and reaches the palace. So there, of course, he has seen a real prince. The author has used a word. When he has seen the prince, he has given he doesn't say he has looked at him or he had a glimpse on it. So here, of course, he has used the word saying devouring look at him. Devouring means he is trying to gobble it. So a person who doesn't see a thing and who sees a thing on the first time, and he got amazed by the scene which he has looked. So this is a very fine wording he has used in this one. Right? Later onwards, he goes near the fence, that means near the gate itself, to have a close look at the prince. So immediately, he was tossed down by the soldier who was near the gate. So immediately this incident was attracted, which gave some attention to the prince, Edward. So immediately he rebukes the soldier for doing such thing, for ill-treating Tom. And he asked the soldier to let Tom in. Later onwards, Tom comes in, and they are having a casual conversation. And while having a conversation, he gives some sort of meals which Tom hasn't seen or heard before. Very tasty dishes which he hadn't seen it, because he always lived with a crust of bread or something which we call as leftovers. These are things he has eaten on those days. But here, this is the first time he is having a very delicious dishes by the prince. So while he was having some meal, they are having some conversation regarding about their awful coat, and Edward is very eager to know about the awful coat as well as their family background. So from that, he learns that the sports and the races and the awful coat. So that has fascinated him. The prince is as curious about Tom's life as Tom is by what he has seen of the prince's life. So now both of them are eager to know each other's life. So impulsively, they decided to exchange the life itself. Right? So Edward was treated like as an upstart and a beggar soon after wearing the rag of Tom's. So immediately thereafter, he was hustled off to London in the midst of hooting and shouting crowd. So this you can see in this chapter, right? So okay. So hooting crowd. In this third chapter, there are some important sentences are there. There you can see, I think that you can mark in your book itself. So, at a respectful distance where many country folk were there, the people from city waiting for any chance glimpse of royalty. So there you see how the palace has been arranged. So a separate gate was given for the nobles to go in and come out, same as there another separate gate is given for the princes and the kings to go and come. So this was said in the chapter 3, page 10. Thereafter, you can see another one is in the page 11. You can see devouring look at him. Before he knew what he was about, he had his face against the gate bars. So he kept his face on the gate bars and he watched the prince in with a devouring look. Right? So this is another line is given over there. Right? The other one is you can see if you go ahead from thereafter in page 14, the little prince contemplated the little pauper gravely a moment, then said, "And Prithee, why not? Who helped them undress at night? Who attired them when they rise?" So, this is what happens in the rich families, in the royal families. You don't need to do any of your work. So, even the minor work, that means that can be done by you, are not done by you. You can't do it there. There are so many servants and housemaids will be appointed to look after all the work in the royal palace. So, even if you want to wear a dress, that will be brought by the servant. So, this is what he has pointed out here. So, they are living a luxurious life itself. Right? Thereafter, you can see the other one is the education at the awful court is strictly forbidden, whereas you have seen in the chapter 2 itself, I think so. Right? So the Father Andrew secretly teaches the right ways to and the moral things to the awful court children. So, but here, of course, you see, he says, Edward says, "Learned lad." Before that, knows thou the Latin? But scantily, sir, I doubt. Learned lad is hard only at first. The Greek is harder, but neither these nor any tongues else, I think, are hard to the Lady Elizabeth and my cousin. Thou shouldst hear those damsels at it. But tell me of thy awful court. Hast thou a pleasant life there? So here, of course, whereas the king, that means the kingship has forbidden the beggars to learn the language of Latin or Greek, all these things. That means the education is completely deprived from the pauper families. But here, of course, the prince who urges, who inspires, who motivates the awful court children to learn Latin. This is what we have to see here. So one side, within the same family, the one is forbidding the whole rights of the people, but the other one needs the complete freedom for them. Thereafter you can see in page 15, "Oh Prithee, say no more. It's glorious. If that I could but clothe me in raiment like to thine, and stripe my feet and revel in the mud once, just once, with none to rebuke me or forbid me, seemed I could forego the crown." So this line shows that he wants to be, or he wants to intertwine with the nature itself. Why? Whereas from morning to evening till they go to bed, so they always wear shoes or something else. So he couldn't set his bare foot on the floor. So this has been clearly said here. So therefore only he says, right, if that I could but clothe me in raiment like to your, and stripe my feet and revel in the mud just once, with none to rebuke me or forbid me. So suppose even if you walks without the dress or with barefoot, then of course he will be rebuked by the king or the queen. So he couldn't be interwoven with nature. So he says, suppose if they have given me the freedom to be as like that, then I can forgo the throne. Right? That means I can give up the throne. So he is ready to give up the throne for the sake of this one. So for the sake of the freedom. So this you can see in this chapter. Right? Right. So this is what you can have seen in this one, in this chapter. Now we can go for the chapter 4. So in the chapter 4, you can see, right? So in chapter 4, the prince, that Edward, right, moves here and there, and he was there. You can see, and the passers-by were infrequent. He bathed his bleeding feet in the brook which flowed then, where Farringdon Street now is. Right. So there he rested for a moment. Thereafter, he has seen a church over there. He goes there. So when there also he says that he is the. So in the chapter 4, in so many places he says that he is the prince, the real prince, but nobody believes that. Right? So later onwards, the boys stopped their play and flocked about the prince, who said with native dignity. So that means it can be anybody else. It can be Tamils or Sinhalese or anyone else. Suppose even if you live among the same society, then automatically you have the certain type of accent might be there. That of course is an identification of a person, who you are. So the pronunciation of Latin, or it can be Greek, either Latin or Greek. So when you compare the pronunciation of the Edward as well as the Tom, then of course you can see the real difference. So then he says that he is the real prince. You see in the chapter 4, page 19, good lads say to you, master, that Edward, Prince of Wales, desired speech with him. So the real prince talks to the children on the road with rags. So that was not please hold on, please, once. Hello students, sorry for the disturbance. Okay. Right. So in the chapter 4, if you go ahead, so there is a line is said over there. Have you seen this line? In page 21, you see a nice sentence is given to you. For learning. For learning, softened the heart and breathe gentleness and charity. So through this line, the author wants to say something, or you can say it's a moral teaching for learning. That means, suppose even if you learn, so your heart becomes gentle and charity. So you want to do some charity, and you also become as a gentleman, right? This has been said in this chapter, right? Thereafter, you can see when you go ahead, right? So finally, I warn me, if it be so, and I do not break all the bones in thy lean body, then I am not John Candy. So while he was making some lectures that he is the king, that means he was the prince of Edward. Wherever he goes, he says that he was the prince. So this has so when he was doing such thing, so immediately this was noticed by John Canty, C-A-N-T-Y. So this is the father of Tom. So who wrongly, or misrepresentation, we can say, right? Wrongly he identifies Prince as Edward as his own son, and collared him and took him to the awful court. So there also, so then only he surprises, he questions him. You see, you can see that in this chapter 4, in page 22, his father, he amazes his father. He hasn't seen his father. So then he amazes. Is this his father? Then he says, I know not what you mean. I but know I am your father, as you shall soon have cause to. Right? So from this also he hasn't, the John Canty hasn't learned that he is not his son. Thereafter, when you go ahead, the man started down, stupefied. P-E-F-I-E-D. Right? He was stunned, stupefied, right? Stunned by this incident, right? Upon the lad. Then shook his head and muttered. So John Canty is a beggar as well as a thief. So he doesn't have, because in that family, Tom was loved by Ben and mother, and hated by grandmother and his own father. So here also the same thing happens to Edward. Why? He looks Edward as his own son, and he treats as he treats Tom. So later onwards you can see in the final chapter of the end of this chapter, gone stark mad as any Tom of Bedlam, then collared him once more and said with a chorus laugh and an oath, but mad or no mad, I and thy gamma Canty will soon find where soft places in thy bones lie. Oh, I am no true man. With this he dragged the frantic and struggling prince away and disappeared up a front court, followed by a delighted and noisy swarm of human vermin. So you see the brutality of the father. So here, anybody else, in any family, the child may do any such, that means her mischievous things might go for extreme. But the father or mother would not go for the extreme cruelty. Here, of course, he says, that means, you see, with a chorus laugh and an oath. He has taken an oath that to torture him. So this was said clearly in this one. Right? But mad or no mad, and I and your gamma canty will soon find where the soft places in thy bones lie. Oh, I am not true man. So each and every part of his body is going to be tortured by his father. This was clearly, that means indirectly said. Right? With these wordings, he didn't take him to his place. He dragged him. So dragging is a very severe thing. Normally, it wouldn't happen in any of the families. So here, of course, the father dragged him, the frantic and struggling prince. The prince is suffering from, that means he hasn't eaten for so many, for a day. So then, at that time, so he has noticed Edward thinking that he is Tom, and he drags him home, right? And disappear above front court, followed by a delighted and noisy swarm of human vermin, right? So this is the end of the that means 3 and 4 chapters, right? Now we are going for the analysis, right, of these chapters. So in the first one, that means in chapter 3, when Tom is abused by the soldier, he rebukes the guard itself. It's a very important thing over there. Because the Prince of Wales is, through his, he is trying to protect, that means protect a simple injustice against the citizens of England. He doesn't want to happen any injustice to any single person in his kingdom. That means the subjects who are living under his kingdom, they should not undergo any sort of injustice. He is very much careful about that. Therefore, only he immediately rebukes when Tom was tossed down by his soldier. Right. Thereafter, you can see this shows what does it shows? This shows Edward's development and his humanitarian quality. So this is the very important thing. Humanitarian. So this is very, very important for a king itself, right? So this shows Edward's development and his humanitarian quality. Right? Tom Canty, whose dreams involves being a prince, but Prince of Wales dreams of freedom to do all of the things that Tom does. These are 2 things. So only that means Tom wants to be as a prince only. But here he dreams to be as such. But whereas when you watch this Edward, he has 2 different things. That means he wants to make 2 things. His dream is entirely different from Tom itself. The main intellectual points of Twain's novel is the notion that clothes do not determine a person's worth, his character, or his nature. So that means 2 people are there. So you can see in one of the chapters he says, that means Edward says, that means we 2 are the same. There's nobody can be identical. Nobody can identify us. When we exchange our dress, right? So nobody can, so you can be in my place and I can be in your place. So that was said in one of the chapters over here. That means in 3 or 4, I think so. You easily identify that. Okay. So you go ahead and you can find out. So we are naked and all these things he says. Nobody can easily find out. Okay. So he want to emphasize. So the people of London, London or the family, that means Tom's family or the king's family, could not be able to identify who their child is. At the same moment, the Twain wants to emphasize the other thing is the clothes can't determine a person's worth, his character and manners. This was clearly said in this one. So there you can see, thou hast the same hair which the Prince of Wales. For a joke they exchange clothes, right? So they exchange the clothes for a joke itself, right? Thereafter you can see a plot. The prince, before leaving quickly, put away an article on the national importance that lay upon the table. So there's an article was kept on the table before leaving from there. So plot-wise, that insignificant action. So he didn't put that article on the table with a purpose or with a motive. So it's an insignificant one, right? So action ultimately becomes the means to restore the prince. So that particular article has become as a clue to restore the prince back to his seat. So the fact that when the prince, dressed in rags, demands that he be treated as a prince and orders people to serve him, he is treated as a ruffian and as a knave. So here you can see. So the people who couldn't identify the person, even though, whereas it's a different thing, they couldn't identify it, it's a different thing. But whereas he's a small boy, so they didn't think about that he's a small boy. So all the youngsters joined together and they ill-treat them and hoots them and set the dog on him. So this is what happens to Edward. Right? Thereafter, you can see he moves from the boys at so he moves towards from there and he reaches the Christ Hospital. Right? So there also he goes there with with rag dress. So there also he is confronting a cruel world and considered stark, raving mad. So here of course you can see, despite being humiliated and hurt, Edward determines to make their lives better. This is what the important line over here. The thing is, despite being humiliated and hurt, Edward determines to make their lives better. So he dreams in such a way. He wants to make the life of the people of who are under his kingdom, right, to give a better life to them. John means John means Tom's father. Presumably, that be able to tell, he couldn't tell the difference between his son and some who just looks like him. So as a father, if he is the original father, that means if he is the father of Tom, then of course he should be able to identify easily his son, who is his son. But here of course, if he couldn't identify his son, that means what? It gives a different meaning to that. Right? So we'll leave it. So thereafter, however, John seemingly lacks any real parental instinct because he doesn't love Tom. which prevented him from noticing any small difference in mannerism. So, when the children behaves in a different style, then of course automatically it can be easily identified by the family members. Here of course the mannerism, the accent, all the things definitely would have created some sort of doubt to their parents. But here of course there's no doubt arose in the family of Tom or in the king's family too. So only they look on the dress as well as on the face. That's all. If the face is identical as well as if the dress is different, then of course they feel what they are their child. So this is not so. So each and every aspects and the movement of the child should be watched by the family members. Then only they can say that this is their son. Here of course nobody is concerned about that. Thereafter you see in the 3rd chapter, so the food was provided to Tom. So Prince would have been never heard about that. Those foods are, he hadn't seen that, he never heard about that, the name. Because only he would have heard about the bread and the leftovers which he wouldn't tell the name on itself also. So here of course he was given a very rich meal which he hadn't seen or heard about that. This shows, thereafter you can see later onwards. So that was said in the one moment. Yes. So thereafter we are going for the chapter 4 also, and we will mix together. So later onwards, when he was on the road itself, he was ill-treated by the people on the roads. So this shows Edward's anger. So this testifies to Edward's sense of comparison and his genuine desire to make other people happy. So this is another thing. So as soon as he has come out to the world, then only he can understand. Normally in those days, the kings, they left their palace in disguise and go around their kingdom and visit their places to see what is happening over and how they talk about their kingdom. So here also the prince has come out in disguise. I don't know whether he has come out to learn about the subjects or anything else, but really he would have learned a lot about his subjects. The other one is, you can see, yes. Then you can see both boys. So when they meet together, the both boys see this meeting as an opportunity to learn more about their lives. So when they meet together, so in the chapter 3, they meet together. So here of course they can learn more about the lives of each other. This is also one thing you can see in this one. They might have had if they were born into different circumstances. Suppose if Tom has born in the Edward family and Edward has born in the Tom's family, they would have undergone a different experience. So here of course they are having that means which we say it's a different type of experience. So even if you are born in the family, then of course you will undergo a real experience. But here of course at least you know something about their family. So these things are happening in their family, and he will also know that these things are happening in his family, and they will also think, suppose so Tom has thought that suppose even if he has born in the family of the Edward, then he would have been just like this and that and all these things. He wants to be as a king itself only. So when you watch this Edward, So Edward is a totally different person. Since he has born in the royal family, he has learned Latin and the Greek and all these things, and he has some sort of experience over there. So he sees what? Suppose even if you are born in the family of a court, then of course he would have seen this race, sports, and he would have been with he would have got some ample love from their family members. So there of course you can see, that means in one of the places, in chapter 2 or 3, whereas the mother, soon after he has come back, that means the father expects money from Tom to bring in by begging. If he comes empty-handed, he will be thrashed, cursed and thrashed. So at that time, the mother, who has saved a crust of bread and gave it to him and went with a hungry stomach. This shows what? The love and affection of the mother. So these types of affections would not happen in the royal family. Whereas in the royal family, the father will be busy, mother will be busy, the queen will be busy, and the king will be busy. The children will be looked after by the housemaids. That means the love is not there. So affection would not be shown over there. So each and every person looks their life itself. This happens in the the royal family. So when he listens to these things, then of course it's totally a different feeling gives to Edward. So this is what he said. There you can see thereafter. Yes, later onwards, throughout the novel, Twain highlights the unreliability of appearance and argues that that it is better to rely on intuition and instinct rather than the way something or someone looks. So Twain highlights here the unreliability of appearance and argues that that it is better to rely on intuition and instinct rather than the way something or someone looks. So you should not, we always say, you should not measure others with your own yardstick. Same as here, the appearance itself would not give an by the appearance you can't measure a person, you can't gauge a person. So appearance will be different, and their inward things might be different. So by the appearance you can't measure a person. Thereafter you can see in chapter 4 he emphasizes something over there. So that means yes, so wherever he goes, so you see, this is the learning point. Wherever he goes, he says, Edward says that he is the Prince of Wales. So he was tortured to the extreme. But later onwards, he learned well. And later onwards, he undergoes more rude treatment, becomes, ultimately, he is beaten and dogs are set on him. The prince is finally discovered by right. So later onwards, he learns that if he says so, that he is the Prince of Wales, definitely he will be ill-treated. So immediately he declines from that. So later the boys also left him without doing any harassment to him. So this is what said in the chapter 4 itself. Right? So even if you see in the whole thing, there are so many things you can understand from this one. Right? So in chapter 3, the Tom's chance came when his daily wanderings took him to an area where rich lived. He had wandered to Westminster and the gates of the royal palace. Right? So these are things happens over there. Right? So finally, forgetting, that means what do you say that? Forgetting his rags and his new identity as a pauper, the little prince maintained he was Prince Edward, and this made matters worse as he was taken for a little lunatic and badly manhandled. Right? So, in the chapter 3 there you can see when he was rebuked, he was in the rags dress, and he, without feeling that he is now in drag, he wants to go. That means he tried to get outside to rebuke the soldier, but he couldn't do so. So that's also an intuition, right? Since he has lived as such. So this is what happens in chapter 3 and 4. So now you know about the analysis of 3 and 4. So for the next class we can see the other two chapters. Yes, that other two chapters. So before that, so you can see in the chapter 4. So when he was found by John Canty, right, discovered by John Canty, who believes the lad to be his own errand son. Errand means who has left his offal court and went on a long journey. So he is not here. So then, of course, errand son. Right? And even though old John considers his son to be mad, he still subjects him to be a beating. Thus, the real world that the Prince of Wales dreamed about is not at all like the world he imagined. So, you see, the word mad is appropriately used for both these young children. Whereas, when he was taken away from that means when he was under the grip of John Canty, then of course you can see the ill treatment and the rebukes and all these things he undergoes. So he became mad by this incident. So even if you go ahead from this chapter to the next chapter, now that means Tom's passion has been fulfilled. He has become the Prince of Wales now itself. But he is left alone over there. Whereas when he was in the offal court, there are so many people are there. He has formed that means a kingdom, imaginary kingdom in the royal court which he has imagined. He has formed over there. So there, of course, he has a number of boys around him. But here, of course, he was left alone. No one is there. So there, Tom also mad by the incident, right? Soon after becoming being as a prince. So now, these two boys, when you go ahead from there, we can see in the other chapters later onwards. So in the later chapters, you will see. So now only they are felt. So the replacement would not be suitable. That means Tom felt being as a prince, he can execute a work, same as Edward felt being as a Tom in the offal court, he can do something, he can do some miracle. But now they are felt, nobody can replace each other. So Edward can't be replaced by Tom, and Tom can't be replaced by Edward. This fact is clearly said in these chapters. Right? Okay. So I will wind up with this one, and for the next class we'll go for the. Now I have finished. Altogether I have finished 4 chapters in the Prince and the Pauper. We'll go for the other 5 and 6 or 7 later onwards. for the next class. Thank you, my dear. Hang on.